All right, for more on those stories, I'm joined now by Sky News Political Editor Andrew Clennell in the studio with me in Sydney for a change. You've been, we're just talking there in the package, you've been in the lockup today for this defence review into Navy. Tell us what you made of it all.
Well, the spin is it's 11 warships to 26, but there's, you know, a lot of maybes around it. They're talking about 6 potentially uncrewed vessels which can fire missiles off, but the technology hasn't even been developed yet. The US just has a prototype. So they say once they happen, we'll be able to get some. So that's 6 of your 26. Then they're saying 11 new frigates, but they're saying that's between South Korea, Japan, and a couple other, Spain, and another country. And so there's not so much certainty around them. They're just saying 4 of those by the end of the decade.
You're right.
And they're saying
they've got to make a decision on which one they're going to go with.
Yeah, and they're saying 3 less Hunter class. So really in terms of what and 6 less Arafura patrol boats. So what's concrete is what they're cutting. The rest of it, you have to take their word for it, frankly.
And the money too. I mean, I made the point 1.7 is real, $1.7 billion. The gross up $11.7 billion number. Well, a lot of that's on the Never Never. Yeah,
the 10-year figures are always concerning. These projects do have long lag times, but the report itself said that they were $25 billion over on the Hunter and other frigate projects. So if you're $25 billion over on those and you're only putting an extra $11 billion over 10 years, $11.1 billion, it's probably just going to account for, you know, the blowouts, isn't it? If you're lucky.
Greg Sheridan, he's got a line here today, he called it a cross between a damp squib and a huge con job.
It gets into them, Greg.
I thought it was telling that the Prime Minister wasn't at the announcement, because normally PMs, in my experience, for these big-scale defence announcements are there.
Well, he was in Perth, and obviously they're trying to win seats in Perth, and a lot of the construction's in Perth, as it is in South Australia, so he felt he could have something to say there. But there's no doubt that Richard Marles's reputation's now tied to this. No doubt at all. And yet that goes to what you're saying. He really led it.
What about this fight today about the budget on boats, that there's been a reduction of the spending that's in part contributed to a lack of surveillance on our borders, you know, dueling budget papers on both sides. But it's been a feature of the day, hasn't it? It
has. And look, I don't actually think this is that big a problem yet, because it's one boat and they've gone to Nauru. But if you had a couple more, wow, you got a problem. So
it's a scab though with Labor. You know, you're really picking up the scab.
Yeah,
I mean, people remember this stuff.
Well, that's the issue. But I mean, I remember covering when it was just so out of control, right? Thousands coming. It was crazy. So if I was them, I'd be like saying to my top brass, you be surveilling, you totally put everything into this surveillance effort now, because it's going to become a theme if we get another boat here. Their full effort should be into it. It's a political vulnerability, that's for sure.
And I make the point, Tony Burke was an immigration minister, Chris Bowen, the worst record in history. I mean, all these Labor characters that presided over all of those 50,000 arrivals that came under Labor's watch, they're still in the political game. They're still there in Canberra. They're still on the Labor front bench.
Well, I'm old enough to have covered when Howard and Ruddock shut it down, and that was 4,000 a year, and Australians reacted like they all voted in relation to that. That was 4,000 a year. Then when the Labor government, it was 10,000 a year. So now we've got 40 people. So, I mean, I put it in that perspective, but the point is, yeah, they need to hold firm, or, yeah, it can start up again easily. And look, even back then in the Howard years, it was people fleeing Afghanistan and Iraq, war-torn countries where they were persecuted. Now this is economic migrants. It's people from Pakistan and Bangladesh.
Yep, India we saw the other day too. Hey, what's this late-breaking news this afternoon about, speculation that there's going to be an early election?
Well, News.com has the story. It's a really intriguing story, because it's a story with Tim Gartrell, the Chief of Staff to Anthony Albanese.
Former campaign director for Labor when Kevin 07 won.
Praising the fact he's about to hire David Epstein, who's a former Kevin Rudd Chief of Staff. And the signal message, and it's pretty hard to leak a signal message or unheard of, talks about how great Epstein is and that it could be an election year. Now, a couple of things on this. One is, I note the article goes extensively through David Epstein's record, as if, you know, should I say it, David Epstein might have had something to do with this story. But I think also this, I have picked up a bit of static around this year could be an election year. Now, the PM says no, the terms aren't long enough, we need to go 3 years. But he also said he wasn't going to reverse on the stage 3 tax cuts, did he? And the 2 dates I'm hearing, Peter, if there was an option, and this doesn't get in the way of Queensland or the US, are November 30 and December 7. So I don't rule that out if their poll numbers are in a reasonable position. Peter Dutton was on Sunday Agenda with me and said there's not an election with 13 months, and I thought at the time, you might not be right there.
What about reshuffle speculation? Because, I mean, I can't see how they survive much longer with Andrew Giles. There's been a bit of speculation that Claire O'Neill wasn't over there for Cabinet in WA. Clearly, Richard Marles wasn't there either. He was in Sydney with this announcement today. What can you tell us?
I think Richard Marles might have gone and flown back, but I'd need to check that.
Of course, he's got a RAF plane, of course.
Yeah. I think he might have gone and flown back, which is pretty arduous, really. And he's gone to Adelaide tonight for an event, but in relation to defence. But Claire O'Neill broke her hand playing basketball. That's why the Home Affairs Minister wasn't available. She did that a couple of weeks back. She was seeing a specialist, so she didn't go to the Cabinet. Andrew Giles is struggling. You know, do you want to do a whole Cabinet reshuffle just for 1 or 2 ministers? Well, there is an opening there, and that's retirements. And if you say, let's say we are a year out from an election and not, 10 months or 9 months, someone like Linda Burney retires, there's your opening. So I reckon if it was going to happen, that's going to be the trigger rather than the government handing the opposition a scalp unless they have to.
Andrew Clennell, thank you as always. Great to have you on the desk.